Okay, so let's talk about Unit 1, Lesson 4, which is solving two-steps equations. So your goal for solving an equation is to isolate the variable. So you want to get x, y, whatever the variable is, alone. So get alone. Okay, so when you what to an expression, you use PEMDAS. So an expression, remember, doesn't have an equals, so we call it simplifying. So when you simplify, when you what to an equation, you use blank blank. So for an equation, you're going to see an equal sign, and when you solve an equation, we use inverse operations. So if something is being added, we subtract. If something is being multiplied, we divide, and vice versa. All right, so some tips for solving equations. When you simplify, we use PEMDAS, but actually when you solve an equation, we usually want to go backwards. So usually we want to do the adding or subtracting first, and remember it's going to be the inverse. Then we're going to do the multiplying and divided, the exponents parentheses last. Okay, so we kind of reverse the order when we solve. So you want to add or subtract first. Now, if an expression is being divided overall, like x plus 1 all divided by 5 equals 8. This is an exception. So because we're not really just adding a term, we're dividing it first, you want to address the division first. Okay? If it was something like x divided by 5 plus 8 equals 13, see, this is different. So that is when we would want to address the addition first. And those are really the two different scenarios that students get confused on. So I've got 4 examples for us to try, and this should help you get started. So let's look at the first example. This kind of looks like what we just talked about. Overall, the whole left side is being divided by -16. So to address the division, the inverse operation is to multiply, and you always want to multiply by the denominator. So we're going to multiply by -16 on both sides because that balances the equation. So a -16 divided by a -16 is 1, and that would cancel. So we would be left with n plus 5, and -1 times -16 is +16. So then we're going to look, and if we want to get n alone, we're going to do the inverse operation, which is to subtract. So 5 minus 5 does give you 0. You want to check it so you know you did the right operation. 16 minus 5 is 11, and that would be our solution. Now, if you want to check, this is a quick check. You're going to take that 11 and we're going to substitute that into the original equation to see if it's true. So, does 11 plus 5 divided by -16 give you -1? Well, 11 plus 5 is 16. 16 divided by 16 is -1. And so that's true. So we know we had the right solution. Our second problem, there's actually 2 different ways to solve this. If you do recognize this as being multiplied, you're welcome to divide both sides by 2 first. Most students will distribute, so that's going to be the solution I show you. So we get 2 times n plus 2 times 5, and that still equals -2. So then we've got to get n alone. Remember, that's our goal. We've got to move the 2, and we're going to have to move the 10. You always do your adding or subtracting first. So we are going to do the opposite, which is subtract 10. So check, 10 minus 10 does cancel. We would be left with 2n equals -12. Then for the last step, the 2 and the n are actually being multiplied, so the inverse operation is to divide by the number you want to get rid of. So we're going to divide by positive 2. So n equals negative 6. All right, let's look at our third problem. So we have a negative 6 plus x divided by 4 equals negative 5. So we have two separate terms. We need to move the negative 6 and move the 4. You always do the one that's being added or subtracted so it won't be connected to the letter. So we're going to do the inverse is to add 6. You always want to look in front to see what you do, the opposite of. So negative 6 plus 6 does give you 0. You want to check that. We have x divided by 4 equals 1. So then, to get the x alone, 4 is being divided, so we want to multiply by the number we want to get rid of on both sides. So x equals 4. And then our last example, negative 9x plus 1 equals negative 80. Same thing, we want to move the negative 9, move the positive 1. So we're going to add or subtract first. So that does give you 0, so negative 9x equals negative 81. These two numbers are actually being multiplied, so we want to divide by the same number. So negative 9 divided by negative 9 is 1, so x equals a positive 9.